Like, you know, how you found the one you want to marry and then you cheated on her.
I was like, oh,
like,
yes.
oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We're talking about matchmaking in life, how you choose your partner, your work, your opportunities, even where you live. Michelle and I are joined by Nathan Roestandy, founder and CEO of Nafas. Nathan, I've seen you make good calls and some very questionable ones. So Nathan is one of my, I would say, closer friends in Southeast Asia. So I have a lot of stories.
No, I'm ready. Let's do it.
He's ready.
In the hot seat at
In the
like
hot
10 a.m.
seat.
in the
I
morning.
know, right?
Give us a quick sense of what you're building at Nafas.
I think what we're building is, kind of like optimizing the indoor environments we live in. We measure so much about ourselves. We wear rings, wristbands, and so forth. And there's been this whole kind of craze around, measuring your output in a sense of your physical body. But when you live in a city where air quality is an issue, that turns out to be a very important health signal as well, right? So it's how do we kind of transform indoor environments into environments that are conducive to our health.
So you've made some big decisions from co-founder, Nafas, investors, moving to Doha. How did those decisions come about?
Well, choosing my co-founder, it's a combination of like timing, right? I was at the time kind of like looking for a co-founder. I was introduced to Piot. I had known Piot already. We sort of came from the similar sort of international school circle. He was, I think, 2 years above me in school. And, I was introduced by Kevin, who's another friend, and they brought him in to head marketing at Gojek, and he was coming off this, really solid streak in his personal career, right, in advertising, agencies, etc. So, kind of felt like complementary skill sets, somebody experienced with, with the right experience. So I kind of and then the rest is just kind of a leap of faith, right? But then later on, you kind of realize that it's less about the experience and the background and like the skill sets. It's more like just the personality and the character, right? So I kind of just took this leap of faith and it paid off. And then the move to Doha was just, honestly, that didn't feel like a difficult decision to make. I think that was already some years after building Nafas, right? And going through COVID, right? Like going through personal difficulties. And so arriving at a point where there is this sort of golden opportunity, it's a no-brainer. You just like, oh, for sure, right? So it didn't feel like a big decision to make, but it's an important decision to make, right?
You mentioned, Piot you met through your friends. I think you've always had a strong circle. What makes you trust someone new as part of your circle?
That's a really good question. I think I've always been really lucky to have attracted really good people in my life. And, it's when I think back, it's probably something that it's sort of my biggest privilege in life. And I've always also had this bit of an ability to kind of feel people out. If somebody is, not authentic, or somebody is like just something, I just always had a good feeling about that. So typically when I meet someone, I can sort of assess and sort of arrive at a feeling like deep inside, it's like, okay, I think this is somebody that we could trust, right? And then you just get to know them more and so forth.
So I want to pivot to Michelle. So we're talking about, and being intentional with your choices, choosing the people in your life. I met you, you were in a relationship when I met you,
yeah.
and then you weren't. And then you decided, I don't want to be in a relationship. And then one of our meetings, our work meetings would start with Michelle's personal proclamation. So she just went, I am ready. I am looking for a boyfriend, a serious relationship. That's what she said. So you're now being intentional about looking for a partner in life. What are you optimizing for now based on that and also while building the business?
Yeah. I think I'm really, really drawn right now to people that have that builder mindset and that builder like mentality. And that's because like just through my life's experiences and all of the people that I hang out with and I'm close to, there's always that same through line, right? We have all been building something or like creating something, or there's something original in our minds and in our lives that we want to take it and put it out into the world. So I used to just think like I've got really cool, amazing friends who are doing like cool shit. But when I look deeper in the past couple of years, I realized I'm drawn to those people because those are qualities that I have myself, but it's also qualities that I really admire and respect because it's such a challenging thing to come to the world with an idea and a belief that you feel so strongly about and you want to like bring it out there. So it's a kind of mindset of, okay, this is something that I want to do and something I want to share with everyone else that I'm particularly drawn to. And so there are overlaps now, I would say, in the way I'm looking for a partner and a client or someone that I might represent on a professional basis, right? And the whole thing is around like, what do you actually stand for? Why are you doing what you're doing? And can you communicate that in a compelling way? Like, can you show me what your dreams are? And can we stand together and look at it happen? And can I be a part of that journey?
But how do you avoid defaulting to what's already familiar?
Yeah. See, I don't think it's a matter of like avoiding it completely. It's how good you are at recognizing that you're defaulting to what's familiar, right? Because there's a reason that patterns show up in your life, even in the way that you interact with people and the types of people that you're around. And so I've done this last year in a professional capacity. I wrote about it, which is that I was just so sick of being in the same rooms and like being with like marketing people, being with brand people. We were just stewing in this whole like echo chamber of this and that, yes and no's. And so there was this one big week in Singapore. It was like Token 2049. It's like all of, it was a combination of F1, but also, Web3 and crypto. And I just wanted to step outside my own bubble and to see like what else people in that builder space, founder space were doing. And I got so much from that. And what I learned from just being in the wrong rooms was that if you're bold enough to show up in the wrong room, someone is going to take notice of you and teach you and like show you the way that they're thinking about things and like show you just a different way of looking at the world. So I think it's recognizing that you're falling into a same pattern and then trying to do something about it.
I guess, for Nathan then, I mentioned earlier, you tend to run in like the same circles. A lot of your friends have their own companies as well. Most of them I think are married and with kids are half of them.
I would say half of them.
How do you think about this, I guess, in your own life? Because you are kind of like building something new. You're in Doha. Are you looking at them and be like, I want what they have? Or have you now done the work where this is what I want for me in the present?
I've actually thought about that a lot. I think, when you're really kind of in the midst of building something and things are not going well, and you kind of, the question that confronts you is that, hey, you really want to do this, right? Do you really want to kind of go through the pain and the suffering really of like going through this? And so I've asked myself a few times, and I think, starting a company, becoming an entrepreneur, I was really lucky that I was surrounded by entrepreneurs throughout my life within my immediate family, from my mom, from my dad, my uncle, my uncles. And I guess like maybe this is like a Chinese thing, but everyone's sort of like, you just start a company, right? It's like sort of like especially in Indonesia, it's like, well, you you just start a company, right? So I've always wanted to kind of like thought like, okay, that'd be cool to start a company one day. But then of course the biggest, I think, source of inspiration was seeing a few of my friends kind of build something very successfully, and that was sort of like, oh wow, that's really cool, right? You can sort of just dream really big, and you can kind of make something happen. So that was kind of, I think, what was really fascinating. I think definitely having friends that encourage. I've always had very competitive friends, as you can see. Joe is extremely competitive. It's a kind of competition that's positive some, where like, you're not, you see what the other person have, and it's not like you feel like, oh, but it's like it pushes you to kind of do the same, right? And it's this amazing dynamic that it's just been very fruitful.
So just reflecting on where you are today and what you have today, both in your personal life and in a business capacity, were you always clear that that's what you wanted? Or did it sort of like materialize as you went along the way?
Well, throughout my 20s, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Post college, I just kind of, was just kind of just dilly-dallying a bit.
In Jakarta.
In Jakarta mostly. I was still kind of finding my way, right? It wasn't until I started my first company, Zulu, where I was like, oh, this is so much fun, right? And then that just kind of, I guess, snowballed into building another company, and as long as sort of like, obviously there are a lot of aspects of my job that are not like the most fun, but as long as I get to kind of like design some type of product, then it's like cool. I can do this for a while, for a long time,
Was there anything that's happened that has nudged you in one direction but was actually a misdirection?
I think maybe on a deeper level, sort of like having the right motivation. Maybe my initial motivation was around it reached a point where like, well, if I can't succeed in this, then what am I really about? Like what's my value? Like what's my worth? And and then it becomes this like all-consuming endeavor where you're just like, I have to succeed. I have to succeed. And you try so hard at the expense of your personal life, right? So I think what I've sort of managed to course correct, that I'm still kind of like in the process of doing so, is like, kind of like being fine with who you are today, and not fixating too much on the outcome, I guess, right?
That's what I was going to add. I feel, when you started Zulu, that's also when your friends at Gojek were blowing up. So, there's that, not comparison, that competitiveness, but they are your friends.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
But then you're looking at them like, shit, I don't know how, like that worth of Gojek then. And then they're, you're starting out Zulu. Did you feel that in your circle, again, your inner circle, like successful people, did you feel like you had to prove yourself to your peers as well?
100%. It was self-imposed, obviously, right? And I actually had this conversation with the guys, the Gojek guys, Nadim especially, and just like, it's just sort of like, deep down, I've always wanted an older brother, and I've always had like friends that I kind of looked up to, right? Joe being one of them, and you have this kind of deep feeling of wanting to please them, right? And so that was kind of the driving, like the reason why I kind of like, oh, I want to prove so that I am sort of like worthy as well, right? And for the most part, I think that kind of got things going. I started to kind of like, it really pushed me, but I think that can only, it arrives at a point where you're like, it becomes not sustainable, and you have to kind of find a different operating system, right? So, but yeah, no, absolutely.
I think when you started Nafas, you were in a serious relationship.
No, actually.
Not yet.
It kind of happened at the same time.
Okay, so around the same time. And then when the Doha thing started, or the conversation about moving to Qatar, I think that's also when problems with that relationship came about.
Yeah.
Do you see the correlation, or was it just a complete coincidence?
It was a complete coincidence. I mean, in the sense that the move to Doha would have happened kind of regardless, right? So I guess maybe, did my move to Doha was as a result of sort of like maybe the failings of my relationship, so to speak, right? I don't think so. I think they happen at sort of this right moment where, I think the relationship was very strained at that point, and then there was sort of like this tipping point where basically like cheated on her, and then that kind of just spiraled everything just kind of spiraled, and then this opportunity to move to Doha opened up, and it was almost this sort of like lifeline to like, actually this is really cool. I get to, not only is this an amazing work opportunity, but I can spend some time and kind of rebuild and be in a new environment. And I thought that, yeah, it kind of worked out. So coincidentally, it did work out.
I wasn't sure we were going to talk about cheating. No, because before that happened, you were here and we had this conversation, and I felt at that point that Nafas is really growing. When you are an entrepreneur, when you're really stressed out about something, your focus is on that. And unless you have that really cohesive partnership of that person supporting you and the other person also feeling fulfilled herself, it could lead to challenges.
Yeah. Well, so actually, I actually had, probably the best supporter, and almost to the point where, not almost, but she would even have more faith in me than I did in myself. And that's what made this whole ordeal extremely painful, and sort of this guilt that's just been lingering for so long, right? But what the mistake I did was sort of like, you become so engulfed and consumed by, building this thing that your personal and your career life, the line sort of blurs. And so, you're just basically, you're not really present. You can't really fulfill any other role except being the steward of your company and having to just, make sure it doesn't die and it works out. Right.
So we're talking about company, right? And the people that are around you. It's always helpful when the people that you spend so much time with, whether in your personal capacity or in your work capacity, can actually become a mirror for who you are as a person, because they are the ones who can often see when you're not doing well. Even if you're like, I'm doing so well, I'm like thriving, because they're the ones who know you and they love you and they want the best for you. And so if you don't have that circle of people that you can trust to call you out or to call you in, then that's going to be a huge pain, especially as we're individual founders are building on this like lonely journey. And so I know we're going to be talking about partnerships eventually in other episodes, but it's partnerships in work and in the workplace and like in life, like that's super important because you can't just do it alone.
That's so true. I think that's maybe one thing I missed at one of your questions is that you want a sort of a group of friends that can just give it to you straight, and one of the kind of virtues of having really close friends is, we give each other a lot of shit all the time. But really kind of like, we're also very vocal about if someone's making a mistake, right? And that has probably been the single most important thing that has helped me kind of arrive at this kind of point.
So when you made that one, big mistake in your relationship, did that spill over into other parts of your life?
One of my really close friends, actually, Sahil, kind of gave me this really great advice of like, well, I'll sort of like, what do I do, right? It's you're sort of hit rock bottom, and at the time as well, it wasn't sure that we had this deal with Qatar, and like moving there wasn't really cemented yet. So it was sort of like, well, everything kind of crumbled and everything is in disarray. And the advice he gave was like, look, as somebody that has, kind of suffered a divorce recently, it's just making sure that this doesn't go in vain, right? Like you're able to kind of like extract some fundamental learning and kind of like really build like a better self. So did it have like a spillover effect at work? I think that work became an easy distraction from like, just the sadness, the chaos and all that. So it was a great distraction. I think a lot of people use work as a distraction during difficult moments. But I think that process of kind of like rebuilding and then, kind of like understanding myself, like, or just being more intimate with myself did have an incredible impact on me as like a leader, for sure.
Have there been other situations where you had this long-term goal or this is what you had planned in life, but it didn't actually match what you were doing in the present?
Yeah, all the time. I think maybe it's around these preconceptions you have of like, well, by this point, I should be married. I should be successful. I should have, this and that. And I think the older I get, the more I'm realizing that, life seldom goes to plan. And especially with like long-term plans, there's so many variables that you have no control over actually, right? And it's all about just kind of like, interpreting signals in the present and just, I hate saying the word like going with the flow, which is kind of cliche, but it really is kind of like that, right? And doing what feels right to you.
Actually, I've always been like that. So whenever someone asked about a 5-year plan or a long-term goal, I really struggled with that because I don't know. And I kind of not want to know. I kind of want to be optimizing for living in the present and just figuring it out and going with the flow, because that way I feel like I can carve out more openness and spaciousness to see what happens. And when you're so closed off towards like that one single-minded goal, you get so easily derailed. So I would just much rather live a spontaneous life.
Yes, but you have now this goal of finding a life partner. So for me, okay, this is your goal. What are you going to do on a day-to-day?
Yeah.
Behavior changes don't get...
You're very strategic, like super strategic with
Aren't
all of your recommendations. I mean, I am, but I'm still kind of like, the headline is I am unseriously dating.
So I feel like, you're looking for a relationship, how you present yourself would be different.
Different than...
Then someone I just want to have fun.
Yeah.
So I guess that was my point. Like, if you have these long-term goals, things that you want to achieve, how you present yourself, the decisions you make on a day-to-day, it needs to be reflective of that goal.
So, what I would say is what's different in the past couple of months or like a year, right? I think this life decision is also coming along the fact that now we're with our own business. And I say like now, it's been almost 2 years. It's a big identity shift. And the thing that I've learned and I'm really just careful about is I'm really aware of my effect on people. And I'm really aware of the fact that anyone that I stand next to right now is going to look really good. And I've worked hard to be this version of myself, a lot of work, but also I'm this like shiny person right now. And so I care more about how I'm making you look and whether you're deserving of sharing in that light. It sounds like kind of pompous, but the truth is, I don't think it's hard to find someone who's your equal, whether in terms of like intellect, curiosity, values, principles, but the goal really is that you can find someone that matches you or at least looks at you at eye level and can look at challenges and opportunities, not in a similar way, but, you have shared language for approaching that. And you can be like sparring partners. I feel like that's the most beautiful thing.
Like me and Joe.
Like you and Joe, like you and I.
Like you and I, me and Joe, my partners.
I'm really curious about this instinct that you talked about earlier on, which is the instinct for telling something about someone, right? Like being able to like get the gist of who this person is. What are some of the things that you look at?
I mean, obviously, they're superficial cues that, I mean, everybody can sort of like learn, observing like body language, eye contact, like certain mannerisms that you can sort of like form like a basic superficial understanding of someone. But I think like this feeling like, is this somebody that I can trust? Or it's more often the feeling like, something is off about this person. And it's not really sort of like this cognitive exercise. It's just it's just sort of like a deeper intuition. It's hard to kind of describe, but when somebody is just not like somebody is not sincere, that has always been like very kind of like apparent.
Because it's so performed, right? Like it's the biggest tell when someone is performing themselves for an audience and just performing for you as well.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. For me, it's reliability. I hate it when people are late, when people don't show up. I mean, that time with the aunt, I did break up with him briefly. We weren't friends.
To my defense, I was probably recovering from a crazy night out.
Yeah, no, to his defense.
Where I was like completely incapable of showing up.
But before, before children, before Joe, it was definitely like a make or break for me. For a lot of people, like if someone flakes out, if someone just doesn't show up, like no chance. I will not talk to them again. Now, I have a higher tolerance in that I'll still interact with this person, but I've just written you off as a close friend. But I will still interact with you because for me, you just matter less. Your impact on me, there's actually very little impact because I have this whole bigger thing in my family life.
So would you say your threshold for walking away is sort of expanded?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. And I think it also varies. For work, I have a higher threshold. Like I've stayed in jobs that I worked with bosses that I disliked for years. Joe used to complain about this. You are so tough on me. Why can't you be the same with your boss? He's a tool. Like, wait, we shouldn't say that.
It's okay, now they all know you.
Now they all know. He's a B player.
Oh my
Why
gosh,
are you so tough on me? But you let this person get away with his shit. And I don't know. I don't have an answer because is it because it's more of a transaction? I don't know. I actually don't know why. Because most of my jobs I've stayed there for like 4 years, but I think at year 2 I was already like, fuck this, I want out.
Yeah.
But I stayed. I don't know why.
Yeah, I get that. So I meet like 3 to 5 new people each week. And that's kind of like for work. There's a lot of networking that I do. And I have a much lower, my tolerance for non-engaging people in a networking setting is really high. Because I know that, I'm able to like swing the conversation a certain way. I'm able to like infect them with certain energy that I want them to have. But if you're coming to me one-on-one, like whether, it's a friend or it's something else, and you're just not bringing that equal energy, I just shut down. But you never see that side of me in a business setting, which is kind of why I think that networking and business relationships really are the highest form of, or in a way, it's like there's so many parallels to like romantic relationships. Like it's a pursuit, right? Which is why I always say like I'm in the matchmaking business, bring people together, but also I'm kind of seeing whether or not there's a fit in the ways that we can work together.
So I think, both of you have evolved over time, which is great. I've seen you change. I've seen you, actually, you've been pretty good. You've been pretty evolved from the beginning, and I think it's just even better. Is there anything that you're clearer on now than before in terms of relationships in general?
I think if anything, I've sort of loosened up on these preferences. Oh, it has to be like this, like that, and just sort of. It's also really different now that I'm in my late 30s versus when I was in my, let's say, early 30s or late 20s, when you kind of meet someone, right? And you're trying to form some relationship with. I've always been a bit of a control. Like, I like to, things have to be a certain way. And now I've kind of like loosened up. And when you do that, you can kind of see other qualities of a person, right? That otherwise wouldn't fit your whatever kind of like criteria set you have. And I think that's been really, really good.
I think what's like non-negotiable for me right now is just the feeling of alignment. Are we, yeah, again, like I genuinely don't want a carbon copy of like who I am. I think I want it to be additive to who I am as a person. I have such a whole, full life, and I want it to be more. So can you bring that more? Can you stand next to me and bring that more? I think before it was kind of like, okay, you know, like let's just have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you literally used to always say like, if you can make me laugh, like, okay, we're set, which still stands, right?
Yeah,
But it's so much more than that now, because all the steps that I've taken to come to where I am today, can you see that and just see beyond the me that I am today, and like think about everything else that we can do together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just having a growth mindset. I think that's the most important quality of someone, you know, somebody that doesn't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to. So I think that, right, okay, the main quality that I'm looking for in someone is that you have to want more for yourself. And you may have to make decisions around that. So growth mindset is so important.
Yeah.
But also recognizing that, okay, what's next, and like how can we grow and how can we evolve?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about my circle, I don't want people to be like me. I don't want to be surrounded with Nathalies.
No.
What do you mean
Definitely
no?
not.
That'd be great for
It'd
you.
be too intense.
Too intense? Oh my God. Oh man.
I would want to hire all Nathalies, yes, for sure.
That's a compliment.
Dude, this is going to be the best version of yourself if you're surrounded by Nathalies. What's the one thing people should focus on if they want to improve their judgment?
So I think pattern recognition is really important. People tend to like look at potential, right? You tend to be like, oh, I could see this happening. I could imagine this. There are signs that point at this. But I firmly believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if people are consistently showing you signs and demonstrating actual actions that point at a certain fact about them, don't overlook it just because you really want it to work. And this is both in a personal relationship or a business relationship. Someone can dangle like a big business deal in front of you, but they're treating the waiters like shit. What do you do about that relationship? Do you go into business with them just because you want the check, and maybe in 5 years' time it turns out to be, well, this is an absolute nightmare of a character. And it's the same for a personal relationship. Like, they could be telling you all of these things, but their actions don't actually track. So look at the visible actions rather than like what else is said. That's just really all just words.
Yeah, I think, you know, judgment is this sort of like, it's not purely a intellectual exercise, right? It's a combination of kind of like intuition, your intellect, etc. But I think so to do that sort of like effectively is also to kind of go deep into yourself and understand how certain things in your life has shaped the way you think, because that stuff kind of happens very early on. And then sort of arriving in a state where you kind of like yourself you know. I think that was my biggest issue is like, how confident can you be ultimately, right? Like authentically confident if deep down you don't even really like yourself, right? And I think that exercise then produces better judgment as a byproduct.
Yeah, I like that. I think for you to make that judgment, you should know yourself, your motivations for that judgment, because yeah, there could be some bias that's coming from
Tons of
your
biases.
context.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. This is fun.
This is enjoyable. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Long overdue, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.